So first of all, our speaker is Ed Vogel, who's a child of the 60s and a US Navy veteran. And he lived out his rather snide remark to a teacher, a doubtful high school teacher, where he said, no, an engineer on a boat. And I'm not going to explain it. If you want to find out what that's all about, you'll have to join him on Gathertown. He's largely a self-educated electrical engineer and mathematician, and he lives in Minneapolis, where he works on medical device research and development. And he also does a lot of work with STEM and the arts education at nights and weekends as a volunteer. He's a longtime fan of Martin Gardner, and he's honored, as well as we, to have him here and present his Soma Cube research on today, Martin Gardner's, what would have been his 108th birthday. He's also going to tell us some anecdotes about Martin's influence on his life, as well as in his activities with STEM and the arts. So with that, I will say, take it away.
All right, well, thank you very much. And again, I'm honored and delighted to be here with you all today. So on this first slide, there's Martin's famous book, Science Puzzlers. My first memory of this book was 1961. My brother brought it home from a scholastic book fair that they had at school. And I didn't know Martin well, but Martin apparently knew me well, because since the mid-1980s, and as recently as this summer, I have taught classes in making and throwing boomerangs. Pulse detector, I am currently working for Nonin Medical, who I've worked there 10 years, and they commercialize portable pulse oximetry, and I'm actually working on the analog front end of a new signal processor. And spectrum-wise, earlier this week, I was setting up a new spectroradiometer since we've moved buildings. So let's get into Soma and Martin here a bit. So on the left, this is me with my first Soma Cube puzzle. This would have been either Christmas 1969 or 1970, and I am pretty sure I am answering my father's question of how long do you think it's going to take you to figure this thing out? And next to it is part of my reply. Well, it wasn't my reply at the time, it is my reply now. About 50 years. This slide on the right shows my artwork that was presented at Joint Math Meeting 2020 of different representations of the solutions, the 240 unique cube solutions for the Soma Cube puzzle. And in the background is a spreadsheet of the solutions in a string format. And then in the yellow midground is a tree graph representation of those solutions. And then the concentric dots are in 3x3 sort of squares, is a top-down view, something I'd worked on to develop a more portable view of a complete solution. And well, that's how I met Faye Goldman. But let's get on to more Martin stuff. So the next slide is, these are some photographs from Thorleif's Soma Cube site, which this is a very large Soma Cube that I built while I lived in Detroit. The purpose of this was to be used in some performance art activities that were carry-ons from some dance theater work that I'd done with Soma Cube at University of New Mexico, Albuquerque. And that was fun. After Detroit and a brief stay in New York, where I discovered just what a rough and tumble world theater and performing arts is there, I ended up in Minneapolis, building a even much larger Soma Cube as part of a challenge to us. I volunteer at a STEM activity center called Leonardo's Basement, and we were challenged by the Minnesota State Fair to prove math is fun or do something fun with mathematics. And we decided Soma Cube. We went into the Guinness World Book Records process thing, and it never really panned out. They wanted another $1,000 or something from us, and we just blew it off. But it was a wonderful, fun time. And this then became known to Martin. And this is unfortunately the only written correspondence between Martin and I that I have. This was a communication that I had with him after contacting, I believe, an editor at Cambridge about his next book. And from this correspondence, Martin's final book, Origami, Eleusis, and the Soma Cube came out. And you can see here in the postscript of the Soma Cube chapter is a picture of the Soma Cubes at the Minnesota State Fair. And then holding the book open is some Soma Cubes all the way from Denmark, from Pete Haynes' company, which I believe is called Hayne Company. And then some other little Soma Cubes made from 1 centimeter cubes that connect together, unit cubes. Okay, so another parting thing about Soma Cubes. In my humble opinion, 8 Soma Cubes is a really great number of Soma Cubes to have, because you can make another cube, a giant cube, a 6 by 6 by 6 cube from the Soma Cubes. And you can not only just do it from stacking the 8 Soma Cubes together, it is not terribly difficult to just take the whatever 7 times 8 is, that's 56, isn't it? Pieces, and build the cube, just sort of looking at symmetry and sort of guessing around. There are quite a few solutions. And this is a contemporary Soma Cube that I just got that I think is really cool. It's 7 different shades or hues of blue. And I think it's kind of fun. And the other thing that was really fun about it is the solution that was in there when I opened it up is the gem that got me started on my further research deeper into not just the different ways you can represent the Soma Cube solutions, but some interesting things you can do with graph theory to find interesting things inside the solution set. So, mining the Soma Cube for gems, isomorphic subgraphs reveal equivalence classes. Those of you who have a decent background in discrete mathematics will probably look at isomorphic subgraphs reveal equivalence classes and go like, yeah, right, that's their job. I am not formally educated in mathematics, so what's interesting about this is that these equivalence classes exist in the solution set of the Soma Cube, not that isomorphic subgraphs reveal equivalence classes. It's kind of their job. So this is about that you can play with blocks, and you can use a block-based programming environment called SNAP with a graph theory analysis add-on called Edgy to investigate interesting things. And these are things that you can do at like a middle school level. You can do some interesting math besides just go through the slog to get through college so that you can learn how to use calculus in engineering and then rarely use it. Anywho, mathematics is beautiful, and everyone should have an opportunity to experience it that way. This is about, in the top, you can see some of what I call gemstones. These are things that you can, from a solved solution, they're complexes of 2 or 3 pieces that you can grab and either cleave off of a face or cleave off from a vertex or a corner. So to me, that makes them gems. And finding them, mining the Soma Cube for gems is something we'll get into in a minute. I'm going to go through what the Soma Cube is and Conway and Guy's very wonderful mathematical analysis of the Soma Cube and how it helps us find solutions. So below is my version of naming the Soma Cube pieces and then also giving them unique colors. One of the things I really enjoy about the Soma Cube puzzle is that for something that only has 7 pieces, it has a lot of interesting nuances. And one of them is that the 2 chiral pieces are mirrors of each other. And I decided that, well, and dexter it means right in Latin, and sinister means left. And if you look at the chiral molecule for the citrus flavor, limonene, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, the right-handed one is lemon, the left-handed one is orange. So that's kind of fun. So the naming conventions are so that there is a unique color that you can use with just its first letter when you're like filing away in a spreadsheet program. And likewise, the shapes have a unique single letter name that a single letter abbreviation of their names. So the first interesting, I kind of getting ahead of myself here, but the solution set, if you take an individual solution and make it into a 27 symbol string, it then allows you to use spreadsheet programs. And I'm a big fan of OpenOffice because it does all the great things that Excel does, but it's free and it has good support online. And when I work with kids, I try to use open source computer applications as much as possible. So what it allows you to do then is to take the string and take out everything except, in this case, the color purple, which is representing the crystal T piece, and sort it. And from that sorting, you can then use another program called, I'm using YED to make graphs, but let's get to some of the mathematics of the Soma Cube puzzle that is revealed by Conway and Guy many years ago. Each piece can contribute to the cube, to the vertices of the cube. And if you take each piece and allow it to have its maximum contributions, you can't make a cube. So one piece always has to be deficit. So if you take then the most obvious other step and sort of make everybody their minimum contributions, you get 7. So what all this sort of adds up to is the T always has to be on an edge. And then that's kind of beautiful in that if you now lock the T to a single edge, you eliminate all the, as you're trying, because I have tried to do it, find all 240 by hand. It eliminates reflections and rotations. Eliminates repetition of solutions through rotations and reflections. So there we have constraining the T. This little quote down here about vertices and edges is a direct quote from, that's mathematical winning Oh, I don't have the name of the book there, but it's from the famous book on mathematical games by Conway Guy and Berlenkamp. So I use this ball and stick representation that it helps with graph analysis, and also it's graph theoretic analysis. And it also, you can see the solution pretty clearly. You can get lost a little bit, but you can see that the green L is up there in the top, and etc. It turns out that if you go through all the analysis of how parts must fulfill their role with respect to how many vertices, faces, edges, and the center cube that they contribute to, it turns out that you've now, since you've locked the T down to one position, there are 12 positions that the piece I call crystal can occupy, and those 12 become the branches of a tree graph. That's great and all, but as I went through and tried to find all the solutions, I'm going to skip ahead a bit. Here we are. This is me trying to find all of the solutions and mark them down in that ball and stick format. And I got to 170, and I was both finding that I can't find many more, and I keep finding the same ones again. And the way I put it is, it's as though I'm on a tree that's supposed to be an orange tree. Well, you can separate, when you make a tree graph, you can either consider each branch a branch of the same tree, or you can separate them out into a little orchard, and each one is a separate tree. And I kept finding things like, this is an orange tree, but that's an apple I already found. It's maybe not the best analogy, but it is an analogy. This one isn't terribly too surprising, that the green L and blue Z, the ability to find that one and pick it up and flip it occurs in a lot of solutions. I can't remember the number, but I believe it's more than 30 of them out of the 240. Okay, so this is a picture of Snap. Snap is a block computing program similar to Scratch, but it's Berkeley's version of MIT's Scratch. Some researchers in Australia put together an add-on to Snap called Edgy, which allows you to do all sorts of graph theoretical operations, make graphs and analyze graphs in this simple drag and drop block programming environment. So one of the things that makes a jam is that the complex of pieces are tightly coupled together. And so you can consider those, you can consider the whole Soma Cube graph and then subgraphs of the Soma Cube graph using Edgy. And from that, you can identify isomorphic, this is for those of you who are well-versed in discrete mathematics, you may take some exception to my definition of isomorphic subgraph here. But the people at Claremont decided that he's not too wrong to publish, so they published it. So you can take the string of any solution, and then you can make a network graph of it. And it's a rather laborious bit of processing, but it's not too terribly bad. And you end up with a 7 vertices network or friendship graph. And the weights of the edges between, for instance, red and orange is the number of faces those pieces have touching. And one of the most interesting graphs and gems that I found is it's a complex of green, yellow, and orange, and I showed that earlier. So what it ends up is what I consider an isomorphism on this subgraph is if the sum of these edges is 9. And it turns out that that nicely identifies the piece, and I'm going to go find it here. Yes, this one here. In the bottom right corner is interesting for a number of reasons. But there's 4 different ways that this shape can land back in the large, so that the green, yellow, and orange can be rearranged in 4 different ways and drop back in there. And it turns out that there's, in addition to, so for a subgraph with edge weights equal to 9, it turns out that there's actually several interesting shapes that are either this shape with the green L moved around, or somewhat less symmetric shapes, but they all have interesting behaviors and they're pretty to look at, so they're gems. So topics to explore. The idea of using this simple programming environment and elementary ideas from graph theory should be able to be applied nicely to Pentomino's, which has got a spectacular number of solutions that solution sets that could be analyzed. And my work actually is an add-on to Wilfred Hansen's work from 1990. He found equivalence classes in the, he found and defined equivalence classes in the 6x10 solution set. There's many more. Tetrominoes, also known as Tetris. Hey, why not? It's fun. Converting Snap and Edgy to Python. It's always good to make those sorts of extensions. Python is I've found to be a wonderful programming environment that's been very helpful to me in my professional and STEM arts education life. Another thing to explore, and I just got this book a few days ago, and I'm really just marveling at the insights into abstract mathematic concepts that I'd either glossed over in the past or sort of glossed over me as I fell asleep reading about them, because if I sit in a chair with a book, I fall asleep. But I think that there may be something, there may be, if not some amazing discovery via category theory about beautiful things in solution sets of tiling and dissection puzzles, at least interesting ways to illustrate how one can use category theory to see these things show up. And just, sort of an exercise in the examples of category theory. As I mentioned earlier, that digital collage of mine that I call About 50 as a response to my father's question, how long is it going to take you to figure this thing out? When I was at Joint Math Meeting 2020, I met the Math Alchemy I met I met and became a mathemalchemist. And Mathemalchemy is a project that is, Faye is here. She may weigh in on this some. She has a lot of origami figures in here and much, much more. Mathemalchemy is a collaborative project between fabric artist Dominique Ehrman of Canada, Montreal, Quebec, and Ingrid Debuchy. I don't use her last name often, and I'm sure I'm butchering it, of Duke University, where she's, believes she is both the dean of the electrical engineering department and mathematics. So what Mathemalchemy is it's a very large multimedia installation of mathematical delights. And this tetrahedral kite over here was a particular thing that I helped work on. There should be some cock snowflakes hanging here. I think they're lost in the light somewhere. There's just a whole host of things to explore here. I believe, and Faye can correct me if I'm wrong, which is very possible, that this is from its installation in the lobby of the National Academy of Sciences on the Mall in Washington, D.C. It has since moved to Winnetka College near Pittsburgh. So that was it. That is my presentation, and I guess we can go to Q&A.
What's a good place to purchase a Soma set?
Well, if you go to Amazon, you will be deluged by all the possibilities. I think, in my humble opinion, and I wish I'd put this together earlier, these are Artec blocks. These are from Japan. They're kind of like Legos and unit blocks, but they snap together in such a way that there's no stupid little extra things sticking out anymore. And you can make all sorts of cube puzzles. The one that I showed earlier is from a website called Vsauce. And I really liked those, but there was a lot of difficulty on delivery. I'll bring these over. If you want the real thing though, go to Hain.com. These are made in Denmark, and they're not terribly expensive. I think I ended up with shipping, it was about $35. These beautiful wooden Soma cubes from the company that is run by Pete Hain's family. He does, anyway, I think they're beautiful.
Ed, there was an earlier question. Could you re-explain what you mean by gem?
Sure, I'm going to make one right now. So you can see that there's a corner here, and I've grabbed something and it sort of cleaved off the corner. So I can make another one so I call that corner cleaving. And now I'm going to make another solution that is going to show face cleaving. So that last one I showed you has a lot of, you can rearrange those in 4 different ways. So this one, the predominant feature to me, just intuitively, looks like a face. And so I cleave this off, and I call that a face cleave. And this is of the, this belongs to sort of the subclass of the equivalence class of gems, in that you can rotate this. Well, somebody can. Let's put it together right. Here we go. So this this gem doesn't have to be rearranged in any way. You can just flip it. So every time you find a solution that looks like this, you have in fact found two solutions. So that's face and corner gem designations.
So does Soma derive from insomnia, which is what you probably have to have if you get focused on this?
No, actually, so when Pete discovered it, he sort of cooked up the idea in his head during this lecture that he wasn't completely understand. Heisenberg was talking about chopping up space-time into a lattice so that he could more easily look at it, and he was hoping in this lecture to tell this variety of students about how he intended to reconcile quantum mechanics with general relativity. So this is way over Pete's head. He's much more of a industrial design type guy. So he just started thinking about, well, I can chop things up too. And he was looking at the ceiling tiles. And then he thought, well, what about cubes? And what's a simple thing? And he said, well, a 3x3x3 cube is simple. Well, how about if I just make all the crooked shapes I can? And he came up with the idea of 4 cubes or less joined at their faces, all the irregular shapes you can make. And it turns out, so this is all still in his head. So after the lecture is dismissed, he went to the school bookstore. He bought some dice and he tested his hypothesis that, well, he had guessed in his head that they would add up to 27, that the number of cubes it is to make these weird shapes, 4 or less irregular shapes joined at their faces, would be 27. But the question was, could you make them back into a cube? So he made this thing and discovered, yes, you can. And in fact, you can make the cube in a lot of different ways, and you can make all these other shapes. So he didn't go to his next class, and they sent out one of his buddies to see where he was. And when his friend saw what he was doing, he wanted to do it too. And according to, I wish I could cite where I actually read this, so many students and teachers ended up playing with Soma cubes over the next couple of days that it disrupted attendance, and it's addictive. So Pete decided to name it Soma after the drug Soma from Brave New World.
Okay.
Okay, let's find the right Pete. Let's find the right Haynes site here.
I found that I put in the chat a blog from MathWorks, and that's not the site to buy anything, but it's got something, and there might be something reading from that.
It might be it might be not .com. It might be whatever the .com is when you're in Denmark.
Oh, okay. Here's another one from, this is Parker Brothers in 1969, and that might be old enough that it's in Wood here. Let's see. Try that one.
Well, I also Instagram. I follow them on Instagram, so their link will be in there.
So there's another question from Wesley Richardson. Have you explored pentominos? For example, 12 pieces made with 5 squares each, 5 cubes each, probably in this case.
I have not myself. In my paper, I'll just go get the citation. My work is actually based on, it leads from Wilfred Hansen's work, and let's just go find that. So now in the chat, you can see equivalence classes among pentomino tilings of the 6x10 rectangle by Wilfred Hansen. So his paper really helped me see that there was something mathematical that you could talk about. That existed in these puzzles.
So someone asked the defining gem, and I think maybe you missed it, but you define gem as a piece of the Soma cube you can cleave off as if you were cleaving something like cleaving.
Like cleaving a crystal.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Does that, hopefully that answers the question.
Well, I think the paper makes it as, I mean, it is a subjective name that I decided on. Defining it clearly would be perhaps a job for category theory.
I think it makes sense because, that's kind of what you start with, a raw piece of stone and you cleave things off of it. Usually you don't say the things you cleave off, but in this case, it's the piece that you're interested in. And I'll say right now, thanks, Ed. It's been a pleasure hosting you and also meeting you. Someday I hope it'll be in person and sharing a few war stories before that.
Okay. Thank you also very much for coming and listening and looking at the pictures and Soma cubes with me.